Hello and welcome to the session, and let's continue our discussion for the subsequent topic. So we were discussing about non-access modifier variable, a non-access modifier for method. So there are two things here, one is static and one is final. So let's get started. Okay, so non-access modifier, static and final. So what is a static variable and what is a static method? So first of all, let us see what is a static meaning. So if you see in this class, I have a couple of variables here. So in order to access this variable, in order to use this variable, it is mandatory to create an object inside the main method. Okay. Now let us say this class has hundreds of variable and you want to use, let's say out of 100 variables, you have to use 5 variables. Now, whenever you want to access this variable and use it, as I said, you have to create an object. So it is by a rule that whenever you create an object of this class employee, then the memory will be allocated to all the variables anyway. So if out of 100 variables, your task currently is to use only 5 variables, but whenever you create an object, the memory will be allocated to all the 100 variables. But now you are using only 5 variables. So 95 variables memory is wastage. So in order to, so one of the solution to avoid this is use a static variable. So this is how you declare a static variable. Now what happens whenever you declare a static variable like this, and whenever you use this variable, you need not to create an object of the variable. So how to access a static variable? You access the static variable by employee the class name dot variable name. Okay, class name dot variable name. Okay, so let us see. So this is where I have created an instance of the object, and I can reuse the I can use the non-static variable here. But if you see here, accessing the non-static variable, here I have not created any instance of the object. Okay, if you see here, uh, class name dot static variable name, class name dot static variable name. So in order to save the memory space for unutilized variable, we can go for the static variable where I need not to create any object. Now let us see the other things. So a static keyword is used to create variables that will exist independently of any instances created for the class. So if you want to use or avoid any memory wastage, you go for the static variable, and that will exist independently of any object created. So regardless of how many objects you create, or if you don't create also, you can still go ahead and use the static variable. Only one copy of the static variable exists regardless of the number of instances of the class. So the same thing, it is not dependent on the class, it is not dependent on the object, it is a separate memory allocation. And static variables are also known as class variable. Local variable cannot be declared as static. Okay, so what is this one copy of the static variable exist? So what is this one copy meaning? Whenever the class is loaded into the memory, the JVM, your Java virtual machine, will assign memory to the variables. Now if you see here, the memory to this emp object will be assigned when the class is running the main method. But so when the whenever you have a static variable, and whenever the class is loaded into the memory will be assigned to the static variable anyway, and it will be assigned at the very first time before invoking the main method. So memory assigned to this variable will be there forever. Okay, and one copy will exist. That means you cannot have duplicate memory allocation for this. It will be assigned before running the class itself. Okay, so that is why it is only one copy. So which is a kind of an advantage and also kind of a disadvantage. Why? What is the advantage? So you have only one place where you can go and refer to that variable value, and which will be like a global variable everywhere. You can access the variable value anywhere throughout, and it will remain unchanged. It will be there until you change it, and and you can go ahead and change it also. And So what happens, what is the disadvantage here is uh, the memory assigned will be there persistent. It will be there until the end of your program. So until the end of your program, the value will be there and you can go ahead and access it by the class name. Now this is a kind of a disadvantage because consider that in your program you have hundreds of static variable and you're running your program 24 by 7. So for 24 by 7 the memory will be allocated to static variable anyway, and that much area of the memory will be blocked. So what is the, so if you see the non-static variables here, okay, so if you see I have created an object here and I have used it. Now the moment I am done with this, the moment I'm done with the main method or any other method, what happens is the moment you quit that method, the memory assigned to those objects can be reutilized. It can be destroyed and reutilized for other objects. But same thing is not possible for static because memory will be assigned before running the Java program and it will be there forever until the end of your entire program. Okay, so accessing instance variable by object name, accessing static variable by via class name. So class name dot static variable name, class name dot static variable name. Okay, yes. So calling a normal or a non-static method, you have to create an object, right? So now this is basically advantages, one-time memory allocation, and no need to create an object of the class and assign memory to all the variables. Disadvantages, memory allocation will be there until the end of your entire program. Now this is how you access the static variable and you can change the value of the static variable also. Okay, so remember static variable is just another variable. Only thing is it is accessible by class name and uh, the memory will be assigned forever. So static method, let us see what is the static method. Okay, another question here is, can I use the same static variable as a local variable in a method? Yes, it is possible. Let us see an example. So I have this variable called as temp. It is a static variable and I am using another variable with the name as temp, right? So this is basically same variable, I mean the same name. So I can have a local variable which is which whose name is same as the static variable or the global variable, and I can go ahead and use it. Now this is possible. If you can see, it is compilation, no issue, it will run also, but then this is kind of a duplication. Okay, and logically speaking, we should avoid any duplicate variable name to avoid any confusion. Okay, to avoid any confusion in the entire project, in your entire team members. Okay, so I just comment it out. Okay, can I change the change static variable value? Yes, we have seen we can change the static variable value. Now what is the static method? So static method, how do you access, how do you call the static method? You say class name dot static method name. Okay, so remember static things, static variable, static method is accessible by class name. So a static keyword is used to create a method and that will exist independently of the of any instances created. Okay, static method do not use any instance variable of any object of the class. They are defined in class variable, and methods can be accessed by class name, by a dot and the name of the variable or method. Okay, let's see static method. So if you see this main method, it is also a static method. Okay, the right. So if you see, this is a normal method. Okay, uh, there is no static keyword here. Let us see this example. So main method is a static method and This is a non-static method. If you see, there is no static keyword used here, and this is a static method. So you need to use the static keyword whenever you want to have a static method. Okay, simple bonus and so on. So how do you call a static method? Simple bonus. Once again, if you see here, calling a static method by class name. So class name dot method name, class name dot static method name. Other things will remain the same. The return type, access modifier, whatever argument it takes, so that will remain the same. Only thing is you have to use the uh, static keyword here. Okay, you have to use the class name here, class name dot static method name. Okay, class variables and methods can be accessed using the class name and by a dot and the name of the variable or the method. Okay, now let us see a little difference here, non-static variable and static variable. So non-static variable, no need to use the static keyword. Of course, here you need to use the static keyword. Memory allocation is a runtime, and memory allocation while the class is loaded in the memory. So as I said, whenever you create an object, the memory will be allocated to the non-static variable at the same time, and it can be destroyed also. But here the memory allocation is while class is loaded into the memory. Okay, it is basically done by your JVM. Now third point is memory allocation is one time and no deallocation. That is, it will be there forever until the end of your program. Here the memory allocation can be multiple times and as and when required. So if you see, there are different objects I can create, and once I am done with the method where the object is being created, once I quit that method, the memory which was used for that object will be free. It can be reutilized for other objects or for other purpose. But for static, the memory allocation is one time and no deallocation, so you cannot no, free that memory. It will be there forever. Now the last topic is static block. So what is a static block? Okay, static block, it will be executed first. So remember, for some reason, before starting the main method, I just want to run a piece of code or initialize some variables or some other thing, then I can go for a static block. So for static block, you have to use this keyword called as static, and you have to use the bracket. So no matter where you define this static block, whether it is at the end of the file or start of the file, doesn't matter. So the static block will be run before the main method. Okay, before initializing. So how the JVM starts? JVM loads the class into the memory. It will start assigning the memory to the static variable, and it will start running the static block. Okay, so static method is there and static block. So before the main method, the static block will be run. Okay, let us see how it happens. Right, so if you see, it has printed this is a static block, this is a static block, and it has started executing the main method. Okay, now let us see what is final. So final variable and final method. Just like static variable, static method, we have final variable and final method. So consider a case where in your program you want to define some kind of a constant value. Okay, for example, value of pi in mathematics. So you want to define its value, and that value should not be changed throughout your program. Or let's say in banking example, in the banking class, let's say your rate of interest. So once you have a rate of interest, let it be any integer, float, or string, or any kind of a variable. Once you declare it, you don't want to change its value throughout the program. So that is why we use the keyword called as a final. So a variable declared final can never change its value. Okay, uh, final method, we can also have a method which is a final. So a final method cannot be overwritten by any subclasses. So what is overriding, what is overloading, polymorphism, we have a separate session on that, so we will see this concept in that particular session. So the main purpose is the content of the method should not be changed by any outsider. Okay, that is the final method. Let us see what is a final thing. If you see here, I have a class called as employee2 and I am using a variable called as employee ID. Okay, so one of the mandatory thing is you need to always initialize the final variable with some sensible value or with whatever value you want. Okay, and final variable cannot final variable value cannot be changed, it is final. So as I said, uh, I want to have a constant value which will be there until the end of your program. That is why you go for final variable. Okay, so this is a final variable and also it is a non-static variable. So how do you access instance variable? Okay, you have to use the class, you have to use the object. So emp.empid. Now emp.empid. Now let us see if I try to change the value of a final variable. So the moment I will say employee.empid equal to something new, it is saying cannot assign a value to a final variable, because once you assign a value it will be fixed, it will not change until the end of your program. So that is why I cannot change the value of a static variable. It is a compilation error. Okay, now this is a final method. Okay, get appraisal cycle duration. So this will return an integer and other things, but the type of the method is final. That means I cannot override this method. So overriding, overloading, we will see in the subsequent sessions. Okay, this is about final variable. Okay, what is final, finally, and finalize? So these three words or keywords are they're sounding rhythmic. That in Java we have final, finally, and finalize. So we have seen final method, final variable. Finally is a keyword which is used in the try catch block, and finalize is a keyword which is used in garbage collection or memory uh, reutilizing concept. Now those are totally three different concepts here, but since the name is in rhythm, so that is why it can be asked in interview. So we will see finally and finalize in the subsequent sessions. Okay. So let us see this ready-made classes and other topics in the subsequent sessions. Thank you.